you were generating a ridiculous amount of ideas. So it felt, the problem with these things is that that's exactly what happens when you put 180 nutritionists in a room. You come out with 200 ideas, so 200 visions of what needs to be done. So it was our job to try to sort of make some sense out of all that madness, and to try to find what it is that all of you seem to be putting on the table as things that we need to prioritize in the future. And the success of this meeting rests on our ability to do that, on creating that agenda that I mentioned at the beginning of yesterday, and for that agenda to not just be something that we pull out of, out of the blue, but rather something that we construct collectively. So that's a huge part of the reason why we have been doing this. So what we did was we sort of put all of the ideas that were generated, all the questions, all the main recommendations and priority areas that you identified in your group work. And sometime between last night when you left this room and this morning when you came back, we managed to synthesize all of that into 42 Post-its, believe it or not. Now, the way we went about it, we tried to pick some of the general themes that seem to be emerging, or the general categories. And we came up with 7. Okay, so there's nutrition information, treatment, financing, government, community/access/demand, supply chain, and institutional architecture around SAM. And under each of those categories, we, here in yellow, we found some of the main points that are coming out. So what I'm going to do right now very quickly is to give you a flavor of what those things are. I'm not going to go into details because, the whole point is that at some point during the day you will come up to this wall and you will see it evolving as well. It will go from awfully handwritten Post-its, mostly by me, to properly typed and more legible paper, so it will be easier to engage with. But what I want to do is I want to give you a flavor of it because I want you to do 2 things during the day. The first is I want you to come up to this wall and deal with it as if it was yours. If you think that there is anything missing, from big headings to key areas to specific actions, take a Post-it and put it on there because you have as much right as any of us to do that, okay? The second thing that I would like you to do throughout the day is if you, and this is a hugely important part of this exercise, so please, I was going to say do me a solid, but apparently that's not an expression in English. Anyways, help me out. People, is that an expression? It is. Thank you, the Americans. Thank you. I knew. There was some logic to this. Anyways, so do me a solid and work with me on this, okay? So what I want you to do as well is, if you, on an individual capacity or from an organizational perspective, you think that some of those areas are areas where you are currently doing work, you're about to do work, or you want to do work, put your name down, okay? And that, if we're going to act like a collective, we need to start sort of putting ourselves forward and being part of things. So that's the space for that to happen. So put your name down, even if you don't know whether you're going to have to go back and convince your boss about it, even if it's just sort of a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, that sounds really exciting, I'm going to do that. Because I prefer that later on we deal with who can actually be a part of it. But at the moment, I just want, I think it's important that we sign up to things. So the nutrition information is quite empty, but that's because we're going to have a whole session today on nutrition information, and all the findings from that will then make it into nutrition information, okay? Under treatment, I think the general gist of what we want to see is that we obviously want to improve the quality of treatment, okay? So we have identified 6 ways, or 6 specific ways in which we want to move forward with that. And again, I'm not going to go into that because I'll let you come and engage with it. Under financing, we identified 5 things that we want to see. We want to see more SAM funding, or more funding for SAM. We want to get more data on CMAM costings. We want to be able to leverage more national government funding for SAM. We want to bridge the humanitarian development funding divide, and we want to see better coordination between donors. Sounds very abstract, but the whole point is that below each, we actually have tangible ways in which we think we can influence that. Under the government side, there's a couple of things, generally speaking, that we want to see. One is to see a better integration of nutrition into the broader health sector. I think that's pretty much a lot of what we're trying to do. But we also want to promote stronger government or greater government ownership. And again, there's a set of specific things that many of your presentations or many of you have pointed out as things that we should be doing in order to try to do that. On the community/access/demand side of things, there's 3 general things that we want to see happening. One is we recognize that we need to improve community participation and awareness of SAM. And again, 4 areas of work in which, to do that. Second thing is to strengthen community outreach. I think we all recognize that we need a workforce beyond the health facilities. And so some formal and informal ways of doing that. And generally speaking, we want to improve access to services. Again, the coverage presentations are probably going to generate more recommendations on how to do that. Then there's the supply chain side of things, and the broad categories: improve the efficiency of the supply chain. And again, 3 recommendations on specific, tangible recommendations on how to do that. And for the institutional architecture, there's 3 general things, and not a lot of details on how we're going to do it, please note. There's 3 things that we want to see happening. One is stronger and more coordinated engagement with SUN. Okay? ... we want to see stronger engagement with other health forums. So we stop preaching to the converted and we start dealing with the broader health community. And we want to see a review, what Emily just touched upon, a review of the UN role in SAM and the way the UN deals with SAM. One last thing that I want to point out, you will see that under each of these specific actions, specific steps forward, you will see an A or an R or both on top of it. One is action. Some of these things don't require more data, it just requires that we do something with that data. Okay, so those points, and a lot of that has to do with advocacy, is how do we take that data and make it part of policy or make it part of the agenda. Some of it does require more data, and there's an R next to it. Okay, so those are areas of future research or further analysis. Some of those require both, and you will see that. So, again, in the course of the day, as this becomes prettier and hopefully a little bit more populated, please feel free to come up and say, actually, I don't think that that's the angle. I think you're missing out on something. Put a post-it on it and say, this is wrong. It should be like that, but be constructive. Just don't tell me it sucks, tell me why it sucks, okay? And the other thing is, please come forward and say, I want to be a part of that. Later on we'll figure out the detail, but I want to be a part of that, so that we know, who we have on board to take some of these things forward. Does that make kind of sense?